This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
I feel like before we get going too, we should go ahead and address sort of the way we do our show, pull back the curtain, if you will. We like to get ahead whenever possible. And the last 2 weeks were pre-recorded. And now, as you and I are talking just a few days ago, we lost a great legend named Mr. Pat Patterson, somebody you had the pleasure of working with for a long time. And I don't want our listeners to think that for whatever reason, you and I decided to gloss over that fact. We're just trying to be efficient during the holidays and get ahead as much as possible. So I wanted to sort of give you the floor for a moment here and let you share your thoughts about the one and only Pat Patterson.
Well, Pat was a very unique guy. He was funny. He was intelligent. He had the sixth sense of what pro wrestling, in his view, should be. He was always steadfast in that belief. His philosophy for him was the way wrestling should be. And I just got a text from the housekeeper. She doesn't speak English, and I don't speak Spanish, so we have a hell of a time communicating with it. Fixed bed. Sheets need to be changed. Anyway, when I first moved to Connecticut, Bruce was working with Pat a lot. They were joined at the hip. They even dressed alike more often than not. Little Zubaz, tennis shoes, muscle sweatshirts, which I found somewhat ironic. But nonetheless, they were together a lot. And I had nothing to do. Vince hired me, and I don't know if he knew exactly what to do with me at that time. So I hung out at Pat's house with Louie and their band of friends. I was telling somebody the other day that I was one time, Louie became my barber because Louie had a real successful barber shop in a hotel in San Francisco when, Pat was in that territory 12, 14 years, I think, 15, something like that. So down in the basement, where I got my hair cut, and there was a table and one light hanging down, and I'm sitting in the chair, Louie's cutting my hair. And so Louie and Pat and two other gay men were surrounding the table. We had one light hanging down, like an interrogation light. And Louie's cutting my hair. He did a great job too. And the price was right. But we were smoking a little weed. I don't think Pat was. Louie liked weed. And his other two cronies liked weed. And I kind of liked it. Yeah. And so I said, man, if the cowboy could only see me now. Because, you're raised in the South. There's a lot of unnecessary prejudices.
Right.
And I learned a lot of good lessons from Pat and Louie. And one was to be tolerant of other people's lifestyle. If someone was living an alternative lifestyle, that's their right. It's not up to me. It's not my job to judge them. Well, I can't be your friend because you're gay. There's no difference in saying I can't be your friend because you're black. Or I can't be your friend because you're Hispanic. Something like it's all those stupid prejudices. So when I got to WWE, I got a great education from Pat and Louie on being tolerant and judging people on their own merits, not on their own lifestyle. It's not my business. So that really helped me a lot going forward. And Pat and Jan and Louie cooked together. And Jan thought her spaghetti sauce, and I would agree, was the best I've ever tasted. And she got the recipe from her combined her two grandmothers who were both Italian from Italy. They grew up in Pittsburgh. And so they would always have their arguments and their debates about whose sauce was the best. And ironically, Pat would, in his own inimitable way, he called Jan Jane for 10 years. I said, God damn it, Pat. Her name is Jan, not Jane. Oh, Jane, whatever. It doesn't matter. So we had a great time with them. Jan fell in love with her big dog, Buddy. She'd bring Buddy doggy treats. Pat thought that was a sin. You're not supposed to bring a dog treats. I didn't know where that was written down, but Louie thought it was funny. And so she would always sneak the doggy treats into Buddy when she came over. But he was just he had such brilliance of how he approached the wrestling business. Simpler the better, telling a good story. And quite frankly, the matches that Pat laid out were oftentimes the best matches on the card, and notwithstanding the fact that they were the best stories to tell for guys like me. So I had a lot of time. Pat, hey, look, he was a terrible ribber. If he saw that it pissed you off, he would just do it more, and it did piss me off sometimes because I didn't have the tolerance for the ribbing. You know, when your briefcase is chained up to the ceiling in a building, or somebody takes your car keys. He did that one time in Maine, and it took me hours to finally locate my car keys. It could be frustrating, but he was a lovable guy. He loved to laugh, loved to sing, loved to drink, loved to tell his stories. So he'll really be missed. He was a big part of how I look at wrestling. Pat was a big part of how I perceive the business should be, bell to bell. And he was nobody. I had two great mentors in the business, Cowboy Bill Watts and Pat Patterson. And for my money, my education, my undergraduate degree was very well handled by those two guys. So I've had a lot of people help me, don't get me wrong, but those two are strong influences. And I know that it was a real tough time for Bruce because he and Pat were at one time very, very close. I think over the last few years, they've Pat not being around as often would have, it was an issue to some degree. But, I felt bad for Bruce. I heard Vince took it real hard too. It's just, it reminds us, Conrad, that we've got to keep in contact with people.
Right.
If somebody's your buddy or your friend, just because you don't work with him on a regular basis, certainly doesn't mean you should cut off all contact with that individual. So Pat's death had me on the telephone with a lot of people that I hadn't talked to in a long time. So maybe there's some good that comes out of it for some of us. I don't know, but he's really going to be missed, as you've heard guys say. Jerry Briscoe. I saw Steve Austin's testimonial, and so many guys could say how much Pat helped him, and he did. He helped everybody a lot. So he was a hell of a guy. He really was, and we had very little in common, except for wrestling.
And that was enough.
We like to eat and like to drink. So I felt I lost a family member. I really did. I felt like I lost a family member, and I felt badly for those that were, Bruce and Vince were a lot closer to Pat than me because they worked hand in hand,
right?
Hip to hip, so to speak. So I felt especially bad for those guys. But he's going to be missed. It's just hard to believe I can't pick up the telephone and call him. Just shoots a breeze. So it's just part of our life, man. The journey, the older we get, the days are numbered, and we're all going to go sometimes. But I just wasn't ready for Pat to go in 2020.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all of that. I know, a lot of us listening to this didn't know Pat nearly as well as guys like you and Bruce, who worked with him in the trenches for so long. And he was such a fascinating character behind the scenes that there's always going to be a thirst for more information about, who he was and his life and his influence. And I'm glad that some of that stuff is coming to light now. And I hope people continue to celebrate his memory. And I hope that we can now find a way to talk about Clash of the Champions 4 of all things. No smooth way to make that transition, but that's what brought us here. And
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.